I'm 75 now, and I can't remember anybody except the Queen bee.
Camilla had expected an ordinary trustees meeting, formal greetings, sealed folders, and another afternoon governed by palace protocol. Instead, she heard a declaration that changed the emotional balance of the royal family. Diana had secretly preserved letters and personal gifts for William's 3 children, with instructions that they be delivered only when the trustees believed the time was right. As the final name was read aloud, the Queen Consort pushed back her chair, rose without permission, and walked out. Before we go deeper into what this really means for the royal family, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single update. William did not follow her. He remained frozen beside Catherine as trustees sat across from Charles and Princess Anne inside Kensington Palace. The residence, tied to Diana's life, had become the setting for a decision reshaping how her grandchildren understood their family. A trustees meeting was a gathering of people legally responsible for protecting possessions and carrying out written wishes. But nothing about this afternoon felt routine. Anne watched the lead trustee place a sealed instruction at the center of the table. The document carried Diana's private mark, a personal sign confirming the order had come directly from her. Charles lowered his eyes. He understood why the paper mattered. It removed doubt, blocked interference, and proved these gifts had not been gathered by admirers or palace staff. Diana had chosen them herself. The lead trustee broke the silence through a documented account prepared from the archive. Diana had left handwritten letters and individually selected gifts for Prince George, Princess Charlotte, and Prince Louis. William alone was named as the parent authorized to receive them. The prince swallowed hard when he learned why. His mother wanted the children to know her through her own words, not through headlines, ceremonies, or history shaped by others. Camilla stopped at the doorway when the trustee added a detail. Several gifts came from private family memories, created before Charles and Diana's marriage collapsed. The king looked toward her, but she did not return his gaze. Catherine reached for William's hand as another envelope was identified for Charlotte, while George's instructions required his father to decide when he was emotionally ready. Louis's package carried the mystery. Blue cloth covered an object the trustees refused to identify until every legal condition had been acknowledged. Camilla turned back, removed her glasses, and placed them beside the folder. "Then you have already decided what place I hold here." She left before Anne could answer. Yet her departure was not the final shock. Someone inside the family had requested that Diana's sealed wishes be activated now, and William was about to learn who. The letters were not simply keepsakes. They were carefully divided messages, intended for 3 children Diana would never meet, yet somehow seemed to understand. George was addressed as the boy who would one day carry the burden of the crown. Charlotte was described as the child who might protect the family's emotional truth. Louis received the most mysterious package of all, and as William stared at their names, grief returned not as memory, but as inheritance. William gripped the edge of the table, while the lead trustee continued reading from Diana's written instruction. A trustee was someone legally trusted to protect private belongings and carry out the owner's wishes, which meant these words could not be casually changed or ignored. His mother had prepared a relationship with grandchildren she would never hold, using letters to speak across years she knew she might not have. Catherine watched her husband's face change. She understood that each child would receive something different from the same woman. George would hear about duty and the crown, the institution he might one day lead. Charlotte would be asked to protect honesty inside a family trained to hide pain. Louis, farther from the direct line of succession, would receive something meant to answer the fear that he might one day wonder where he truly belonged. The trustee read Diana's next instruction aloud. None of the children, she had written, should ever feel they had to earn the love of the family or the monarchy they were born into. William tightened his grip. He had spent much of his own childhood wondering whether duty came before comfort, and now his mother was trying to protect his children from the same wound. Catherine spoke softly, but her concern cut through the silence. She asked whether George, Charlotte, and Louis should receive everything immediately. The princess feared that Diana's honesty might expose old betrayals before the children were ready to understand them. William knew she was not resisting his mother. She was protecting their children from inheriting adult pain too soon. George's gift was identified first. A small silver compass Diana had carried during a private journey, with a message urging him to choose conscience over popularity. Charlotte's sealed case held an object connected to her grandmother's earliest years as a princess, although the trustees warned that its emotional meaning mattered far more than its value. Louis' package remained hidden. Diana had attached one strict condition. The youngest child should open it only when he began questioning whether he had a place within royal life. William carried the 3 envelopes into a private sitting room. He placed George's and Louis's letters down, but kept Charlotte's in his hand, tracing his mother's writing with his thumb. Camilla remained alone outside the palace gates, furious that Diana had returned through the children she had hoped to guide herself. Then Anne broke the silence through a documented account from the trustees. The collection had surfaced because of one uncomfortable moment involving Charlotte, Camilla, and a remembrance ceremony months earlier. To understand why the letters had been released now, the family would have to return to the moment Charlotte reopened a wound the palace had spent years trying to contain. Months before the trustees gathered, a single exchange at a memorial ceremony quietly changed everything. Charlotte had asked a simple question about the grandmother whose photograph stood among the flowers. Camilla answered before William could speak, and her words were calm but final. She described Diana as part of the family's past. Charlotte looked toward her father and asked why the past still made him sad. William did not respond. Anne did. From that moment, the sealed collection was destined to return. William had brought Catherine, George, Charlotte, and Louis to Althorpe, hoping the day would offer peace rather than conflict. The private memorial ceremony was a family gathering held to honor Diana on an important anniversary, without turning grief into public spectacle. Charles arrived beside Camilla, while Princess Anne remained close to the children, sensing that the quiet mood could break with one careless sentence. Charlotte noticed a photograph showing Diana wearing a blue pendant. The young princess studied it before asking William whether she might someday hear the story behind the jewelry. Camilla answered first. Some memories belong to another life, and we must allow them to remain there. William became rigid. He heard more than caution in those words. To him, his daughter had just been told that Diana's story was too painful, too dangerous, or too inconvenient to explore. Catherine placed a hand near his arm, understanding that the prince was fighting the urge to challenge the Queen Consort in front of George and Louis. Anne did not stay silent. She told Camilla that protecting Charlotte from adult conflict was understandable, but silence stopped being protection when it erased the person being honored. The Queen Consort insisted she had only wanted to prevent the children from inheriting the bitterness surrounding Charles and Diana's marriage. Yet Anne answered that truth could be shared without passing down hatred. William waited until the children had moved away. In a corridor beyond the memorial room, he asked Camilla never to answer questions about his mother on his behalf again. She stared back and warned him that he could not build a stable future while allowing Diana to govern every emotional decision inside the family. Charles overheard enough to understand the danger. The king lowered his head because defending his wife would wound his son, while defending William would reopen the failures of his first marriage. He said nothing, and that silence hurt both sides. Anne acted after the ceremony. Through a private recorded conversation, she contacted one of Diana's original trustees and asked whether protected material existed for the grandchildren. The trustee confirmed a sealed collection, but releasing it required 2 family signatures and proof that Diana's legacy was being softened or reinterpreted. William signed first. Anne became the second family representative. When Camilla discovered their names on the authorization, she demanded a confrontation before any gift reached the children. The trustees had followed Diana's instructions, but the Queen Consort now believed Anne and William had used those wishes to place her on trial, and she was ready to face them both. Camilla returned before the meeting had formally ended. This time she did not sit. She entered the library, closed the door behind her, and faced William across the same table where Diana's letters remained untouched. Anne stood between them, unwilling to retreat. Then Camilla said the words no one expected. "You did not open those boxes for the children. You opened them because you wanted her standing between us again." William's answer ended any hope of a peaceful afternoon. Camilla turned toward the trustees and ordered them to leave until the family had spoken openly. The trustees were the people legally responsible for protecting Diana's possessions and carrying out her written wishes, but legal language could no longer contain the anger inside that room. They withdrew without protest. Charles remained near the window, knowing the argument was no longer about gifts alone. It was about who had the right to shape what his grandchildren believed about Diana. William did not raise his voice. That made his answer sharper. He told Camilla that the meeting was not an attack on her position, her marriage, or her years beside the king. The problem was her belief that protecting the monarchy required controlling how his mother was remembered. Camilla turned on Anne. She accused the Princess Royal of treating her like an intruder after decades of service, sacrifice, and public humiliation. Anne refused to soften. She said service did not grant anyone ownership over another woman's memory, especially when that memory belonged to William and his children. Camilla stepped closer and pointed at Charlotte's envelope. She asked whether William truly intended to hand a young child words that might turn her against living members of the family. The prince placed one hand over the letter and said Charlotte would receive truth, not instructions about whom to hate. William then revealed the existence of a separate covering note addressed only to him. A covering note was a private letter explaining the purpose behind the larger collection. He had read it. Nothing inside attacked Camilla, Charles, or the crown. Diana's warning was more painful than accusation. She feared that adults might one day mistake emotional silence for stability, leaving her grandchildren surrounded by titles, yet unable to speak honestly about grief. Anne pulled away the chair standing between William and Camilla. The movement forced them to face one another without distance or protection. She told him not to use Diana as a weapon. Then she warned the Queen Consort never to erase her out of fear. Charles finally turned from the window. The king admitted that his refusal to confront the past had allowed the conflict to reach George, Charlotte, and Louis. The trustees returned moments later. Their chairperson opened another document and delivered the final shock. Neither William nor Anne controlled the gifts. Diana had created an independent safeguard to prevent royal interference. The family had exposed its deepest wounds, but the next disclosure would decide whether even the monarch had the power to stop Diana's final wishes. For the first time that afternoon, Charles asked a direct question: could the distribution be delayed? The lead trustee did not hesitate. No monarch, parent, consort, advisor, or palace official held the power to cancel Diana's instructions once the activation conditions had been met. The safeguard had been designed precisely for this kind of moment. As the king slowly set down his pen, Camilla realized the decision had already moved beyond rank, marriage, and influence. Diana had anticipated resistance and neutralized it. The trustee opened the legal file and explained how the collection had been protected. Diana had placed the letters and gifts inside a private arrangement, meaning they were kept separate from royal property, the crown collections, and palace-controlled archives. Crown collections were historic objects held for the monarchy rather than owned personally. These packages belonged to the children alone. No court official could quietly remove them, and no royal command could rewrite her wishes. William listened as the next condition was read. He had been named guardian of George, Charlotte, and Louis's emotional welfare, giving him responsibility for deciding when they were ready. Yet the prince could not destroy the letters, hide them permanently, or transfer them to anyone else. His mother had trusted him, but she had also placed limits around his grief. Camilla leaned forward and asked whether anyone had considered the family's present stability. The Queen Consort warned that private writings from a broken marriage could divide the children from Charles. She feared that George might see his grandfather through guilt, Charlotte through anger, and Louis through questions no adult could easily answer. Charles looked down when the trustee responded through Diana's documented instructions. She had created the arrangement during a period when she feared her voice might one day be filtered, softened, or explained by others. The king's face changed. Her safeguard was not only protection from palace officials, it was protection from him. The trustee then revealed a confidential clause, a protected condition, disclosed only after the collection became active. Each child's package contained a gift and a separate record, explaining why Diana had selected it. Charlotte's carried an additional responsibility. If public duty ever caused George to bury his feelings, she was asked to preserve the emotional history shared by all three siblings. Charles read the clause twice. He removed his glasses, placed the document flat on the table, and whispered, "She believed the children might inherit our silence." Catherine received authority to choose where each package would be opened, while William had to attend every moment. Camilla had no formal role. When she asked to be present, he said the first opening must belong only to Diana's son, his wife, and their children. Camilla rose slowly. Before leaving, she warned William that excluding Charles could turn the king into a stranger within his grandchildren's own family history. The safeguard had protected Diana's voice. Now the prince had to choose whether honoring his mother required wounding his father all over again. By sunset, The sealed collection had divided the palace into competing camps. Some believed the children deserved Diana's words without delay. Others feared the letters would revive a history the monarchy had spent decades learning to survive. Yet the fiercest struggle was no longer between William and Camilla. It was unfolding inside Charles. He had been excluded from Diana's instructions, challenged by his son, and reminded that his grandchildren would inherit a version of the past he could no longer control. Charles listened as senior aides urged him to avoid any visible interference. Palace advisors were officials who protected the monarch's public position and managed the political consequences of royal decisions. They warned that delaying private gifts intended for children would look cold if the arrangement became public. The king understood the danger. One wrong command could turn a family wound into a national judgment. Catherine moved in the opposite direction. She began preparing Adelaide Cottage for a quiet family evening, removing staff and refusing cameras, advisors, or ceremonial expectations. The cottage was William and Catherine's private family home, far from the formal pressure of palace rooms. She wanted George, Charlotte, and Louis to meet Diana's words as grandchildren, not as symbols of the crown. Camilla canceled 2 engagements scheduled for the next morning and withdrew to her private rooms. She ignored calls from palace aides, then lifted a framed photograph showing herself with George, Charlotte, and Louis. The Queen Consort studied the children's faces before placing the picture face down. She did not hate them. She feared that every kindness she had offered might still be measured against a woman who was no longer there. Charles visited her before leaving for the cottage. He said William was not trying to punish her. Camilla answered that exclusion carried the same pain regardless of intention. The king reached for her hand, but she pulled away, asking whether Diana would now be present in every conversation she was forbidden to join. Anne delivered another shock through a documented message from the trustees. Diana had left one final sealed letter marked for the grandparents, but it could be released only after the children received their packages. William immediately understood the danger. His mother may have written directly to Charles about grandchildren who had not yet been born. William stood outside the children's rooms holding all 3 packages. Louis's laughter reached him through the door, and the prince hesitated. Once opened, the letters would permanently change how George, Charlotte, and their younger brother understood love, duty, and loss. Catherine told him they would move slowly. George would receive the compass. Charlotte would hear only the first page. Louis would learn that his gift must wait. Then Charles arrived alone, not as monarch, but as a grandfather asking his son for a private conversation. With no advisors or trustees between them, father and son would finally decide whether Diana's memory would divide them again or force them to speak honestly for the first time. Charles did not arrive with a red box, an aide, or a formal request. He stood alone outside William's door and asked for 10 minutes. Inside, the packages remained unopened on a low table. For once, neither man spoke as monarch nor heir. They spoke as a father who had failed, and a son who had never stopped grieving. Then Charles admitted the fear beneath every palace argument. He believed Diana's grandchildren might one day know her pain more deeply than they knew his love. William allowed him inside, but his condition was immediate. Camilla would not attend the children's first encounter with the letters. The prince said George, Charlotte, and Louis needed one moment untouched by old rivalry. Charles accepted. He asked only that Diana's story not be turned into a simple battle between innocent and guilty figures, because children could inherit hatred as easily as grief. William's restraint finally broke. He told his father that he had spent years protecting him from being reduced to his worst decisions. The future king had defended his love, his service, and the difficult life that followed the marriage. Yet after Diana died, no one had offered her the same protection from being simplified, judged, or quietly pushed into the past. Charles lowered his voice. He admitted that his discomfort whenever Diana was mentioned had often looked like hostility. In truth, it was shame. The king had never learned how to speak about regret without feeling that every word became a confession against Camilla, or a betrayal of the life he had built. Silence settled between them. Charles reached for George's silver compass but did not open its case. The small gift carried the weight of a future crown, the institution the boy might one day lead. He asked whether Diana had truly selected it herself. Every part of this was chosen by her, William answered. The prince then shared one sentence from his private covering note, a personal message explaining why the collection existed. Diana hoped he would teach his children that love and duty must never become enemies. Charles closed his eyes. Those words reached beyond the children. They struck directly at the choices that had broken their family. Charles made his decision. William should deliver every letter and gift according to the trustees' instructions. The monarch would not delay, edit, supervise, or interfere. He asked only to remain nearby after the reading, in case the children wanted to question him about the past. William's anger softened. Catherine entered and accepted the request, but she gave Charles one condition. He must answer honestly and never ask the children to protect adults from uncomfortable truths. The king agreed. George and Charlotte entered moments later. Before either package could be opened, a documented message arrived from the trustees. Diana's final envelope for the grandparents had been released. The children were ready to receive her gifts, but that last letter carried something greater than inheritance or blame. It carried Diana's final demand of every adult who had survived her. The palace had hoped the meeting would remain private. By morning, the world knew enough to understand its significance. Diana had left letters and gifts for William's children. Camilla had walked out. Charles had visited his son alone. Yet one image, not an official portrait or formal statement, came to define the moment. Outside Kensington Palace, 3 children placed handwritten cards beneath Diana's memorial gates. One read simply, "A grandmother found a way to reach them." The sentence spread across Britain within hours. William refused to release the contents of the letters. George, Charlotte, and Louis were confirmed as the intended recipients, but their words remained protected. The palace statement described the objects only as personal items transferred under Diana's private instructions. A palace statement was an official message issued to explain the family's position without exposing private details. Its careful language revealed almost nothing, yet confirmed enough to ignite the country. A major London newspaper captured the emotion with one front page. 3 sealed envelopes appeared beneath the headline, "Diana's last gifts reached the children she never knew." The image carried unusual power because it reduced decades of royal conflict to something painfully simple. A grandmother had prepared messages for grandchildren who would enter the world after she was gone. The evening broadcast deepened the national debate. During a recorded news bulletin, a veteran royal correspondent called the crisis not a battle between 2 women, but a reckoning over whether memory belongs to institutions or families. The words changed the tone. Diana's gifts were no longer viewed as private jewelry or forgotten letters. They had become a test of whether the monarchy could face its own emotional history. Crowds gathered outside Kensington Palace. One young girl wearing a blue ribbon placed 3 white roses beneath the memorial gates, one for each child. Beside them rested the handwritten card declaring that Diana had found a way to reach her grandchildren. People photographed the message, and within hours it appeared across television screens and newspaper websites. Camilla received little sympathy at first. Her walkout was described as resentment, jealousy, even rejection of the children themselves. Then the palace confirmed that she had returned to the trustees' meeting and later requested a private conversation with William. The revelation complicated the story, but it did not erase the judgment already forming. Camilla watched the broadcast alone until Charles entered. When the roses appeared, she lowered the volume and admitted that she had left because she felt erased, not because she wanted Diana erased. Charles answered with painful honesty. The difference mattered inside the family, but outside it, Camilla would always be judged against the woman whose place she had entered. That evening, Diana's final envelope was opened. The world had delivered its verdict, but the family's true judgment would depend on what Camilla did after hearing the last words. Diana's final envelope contained no accusation. There was no attack on Charles, no warning against Camilla, and no attempt to govern the family from beyond the grave. Her message was more difficult than blame. She asked the surviving adults not to make the children choose between truth and peace. She asked them to speak honestly, love without competition, and never treat memory as disloyalty. As the words were read aloud, Camilla finally understood that the letters were not written to defeat her. William remained beside Catherine as Charles, Camilla, and Anne gathered without the trustees. George held the silver compass in both hands, while Charlotte kept her sealed case close to her chest. Louis's blue-wrapped object remained protected until Diana's stated condition was met. The trustees' file a legal record preserving her private instructions rested unopened beside Anne, but its authority had already changed the family. Charles continued reading from Diana's documented message. She asked him to ensure that his grandchildren understood one truth above all others. They were allowed to love every member of their family without denying the pain that came before them. The king paused, because those words removed the choice he had feared. The children did not have to honor their grandmother by rejecting him. Diana's message then addressed the future partners of her sons and anyone who might help raise the children. She asked them to protect the grandchildren's curiosity rather than fear it. Questions about her life were not acts of betrayal. Silence, she warned, could create wounds more lasting than an honest answer. Camilla finally spoke. She admitted that her walkout had turned the children's inheritance into a contest between herself and Diana, even though no letter had demanded such a battle. The Queen Consort had felt erased, and in protecting herself, she had nearly denied George, Charlotte, and Louis the right to discover their grandmother freely. Camilla crossed toward Charlotte and knelt instead of calling the girl forward. She returned the photograph of Diana wearing the blue pendant, taken from the Memorial Archive. An archive was a protected collection of important family records and objects. Camilla said the photograph belonged beside Charlotte's letter, not hidden inside palace storage. William accepted the gesture, but his verdict remained firm. Diana's place in his children's lives would never again require negotiation, permission, or apology. Charles agreed that William would control how the family taught George, Charlotte, and Louis about their grandmother, while he would answer every difficult question honestly. Anne closed the trustees' file. The Princess Royal declared that the family had finally stopped treating memory as a threat to authority. George closed the compass inside his palm. Charlotte held Diana's letter. William watched his children receive what he had lost the chance to know his mother through her own words. Camilla remained beside them. This time, she did not walk out. Diana's last gifts did not divide William's children from the monarchy. They freed the monarchy from the lie that peace can exist without truth. Thanks for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will see you in next one.